Record, my name is Kenzie Bach. I'm the District 8 City Councilor and the Chair of the Boston City Council's Committee on City Services and Innovation Technology. I'm joined here by my colleagues, Councilor Erin Murphy of at large, and Councilor Liz Braden of District 9. This public hearing is being recorded. It's being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. We will be taking public testimony at the end of the hearing. So if you're interested in testifying, please email shane.pack@boston.gov for the link. That's shane.pac@boston.gov. So you can get in touch with Shane and come and join us here on the Zoom. If you're watching this after the fact, you are also always welcome to send written testimony. And so you can also send that to Shane, shane.pac@boston.gov. Today's hearing is on docket 0223. Sorry, 022. No, I said that right. Docket 0223, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $250,000 in the form of a grant for the FY22 Municipal ADA Improvement Grant Program, awarded by the Massachusetts Office on Disability to be administered by the Commission for Persons with Disabilities. The grant will fund the installation of a vertical lift to the third floor mezzanine of City Hall. So we're really excited to hear about this, and joining us today to talk about the project is Commissioner Kristen McCosh from our the Commission on Persons with Disabilities, and then also Carrie Griffin, the Director of our Public Facilities Department. And I think we've also got Joe Cornish, Director of Design Review from the Boston Landmarks Commission with us, because as many may know, but maybe not all, the Boston City Hall building is in fact a landmark. I also want to recognize that we've been joined by my colleague, Councilor Ruth C. Louis-Jen, also at large. So I think, again, since this is a grant, if councilors will forgive, I'm going to dispense with opening comments and instead jump straight to the administration's presentation, and then we will jump into questions in the order of arrival. So without further ado, Commissioner McCosh, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Councilor Bach, and nice to see you again, Councilor Braden. Very nice to meet you, Councilor Murphy and Councilor Lugine. Welcome to City Hall. My name is Kristen McCosh, and I'm the ADA Title II Coordinator and Disability Commissioner, excuse me, for the city. I'm also joined by my Chief of Staff, Andrea Patton, and we put together a brief slide deck just to go through the project with you. So I'm going to ask Andrea if she can share her screen. Great. So Councilor Bach, I think you gave a really good summary of the overall project. We'll just give a few more details and drill down a little bit on what the project's going to mean to people in the city. So we'll go to the first slide. So with this funding, we will decommission the old lift, which was installed in a very haphazard way. And I don't think it really took into account the historical nature of City Hall. We actually don't even know when it was installed exactly. So we hope that the Historical Commission will be happy with getting that removed and replacing it with a nice vertical lift, which will be modern looking, but it will fit much more into the context of City Hall. Kind of the way the city has recently merged the old with the new. So this will stand out as a new element, but it will tie in very nicely. So this project is building on several renovations that the city has recently completed to improve accessibility of public spaces. Some of these include the upgraded City Council chamber. I'm not sure if any of you remember when it used to have a sunken 3-step pit at the bottom to testify. So a few years ago, we worked closely with City Council to get that floor raised so that it's all one level and people can just wheel up to a podium or walk up to a podium to testify. We also had 4 public restrooms made completely ADA compliant. 3 of the public meeting rooms are now ADA compliant. And we recently finished the interior ramp on the 2nd floor, which connects Age Strong and parking and a lot of vital city services. And then, of course, our signature project is City Hall Plaza. We're all really waiting for the reveal in the spring. So luckily for us, the Public Facilities Department had already begun replacing all the elevators in City Hall. So they have elevator consultants and contracts already in place. So this grant is coming in an optimal time because PFD can incorporate our project, the mezzanine lift, right into their elevator replacement project. And we believe that upgrading access to the mezzanine will fix a critical missing link in accessibility at City Hall for people with disabilities and other groups. And that's because recently in the last few years, Mayor Menino didn't use the space much, but Mayor Walsh, Mayor Janey, and Mayor Wu have all tried to reactivate the space and use it for press conferences and events and other city happenings. So we want to make sure that we have good access. We'll go to the next slide. So current status of the mezzanine when it comes to accessibility. Currently, the only way that people who use wheelchairs can get to the mezzanine is by the inclined stair lift. This is a type of lift that's not preferred by anybody with a disability. It has a platform and it only accommodates one wheelchair at a time. It carries the person vertically along the staircase up to the top of the mezzanine, and it moves very slowly. When it reaches the top, a loud beeping sound is triggered, calling unnecessary attention to whoever's on the lift. And also in previous years, people would set up functions at the top of the mezzanine. So sometimes they have to move tables and move podiums just so someone could get off the lift. And a lot of people don't realize this, but the current lift has a lot of limitations. The existing incline lift is really only designed to accommodate wheelchairs. The platform doesn't have a seat, so it's open on three sides. So if you have balance difficulty or you're an older resident or you have a child in a stroller, it's really not built to have somebody standing up on it, traveling up those stairs. It can make you dizzy. It can, make you feel unstable. And just from my experience and what I've talked to from other people, using this stair lift is very frightening. It's stressful and it's really undignified. And adding to that is that it frequently breaks down and it's complicated to use. Next slide. So just to give a quick overview of the MOD process. MOD is the Massachusetts Office on Disability. They began this ADA grant program in 2017, and my office has applied twice. We applied once for a wayfinding project in City Hall that didn't get funded, but luckily enough, we had partnered with the Public Facilities Department and Property Management, so they were able to implement a piece of the wayfinding that we designed, and that's on the 7th and 8th floor. We applied again the next year for the mezzanine elevator that we're talking about today, and that was denied. But we were thrilled to learn this December that our project was approved. And as I said, we've been working closely with other city departments on this: public facilities, property management, and landmarks. And then we just have a few technical requirements of the grant. So the grant doesn't cover cost design or salaries. It does cover purchase of materials and construction costs. One big caveat is that we have to use this money during FY22. So that means we have to spend it all by June 30th. And it is a reimbursement process. So the city will spend it and then they'll get a check from the state. And then we just have the timeline, which is just briefly, we applied for the grant in October. We received notice that we were approved in December. We were recently cleared a few weeks ago to begin working on the grant and spending the money. And as we said, June 30th is a deadline. So we're hoping to leave this meeting with good news. And then just a couple of renderings to show you what it looks like. So this is a picture of the new lift. If you can see on the left, it's a glass box. People will be able to enter straight on, ride it to the top, and then wheel straight off. There's no turning involved. It will be a level entrance. It's much more dignified. It will have an automatic door opener and a button that you can hold to raise or lower the lift. And it just really seems to fit nicely in with City Hall because City Hall, the stairs in this area have, I think it's brass railings. Joe can tell us if they're not, but they're metal, so it really does blend in. And then we just have a outline of the location. It's going to be located just behind that pillar, we think, roughly in that area, behind the nursing station and the pillar. Next slide. And this is a project timeline, and this is from Kerry. I don't know the technical aspects of this. I would like to ask Kerry to jump in if you have a minute.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. So right now we have the designer that we're using on the City Hall elevator project. We've hired them to look at this and provide some options because we want to make sure that we take advantage of this and we have timelines for procuring this. You know, everything is moving pretty quickly, but, you know, we also have to incorporate landmarks into this to make sure that we are, you know, maintaining the integrity of the existing building. So, and that it incorporates nicely into the finishes. So we will be, right now we're moving forward with design and we want to have this procured. Right now, I'm still working with our legal team to determine procurement, whether it's going to be, ideally, we want to get this procured through our current contract because all of the contractors are already, it's 149 project, which we have those filed sub bids for elevator, electrical, and finishes that would be needed for this. So we're working with them because that is the most expeditious way to do this, to procure this. If we can't do it that way, we will procure directly, which will enable us to make sure that we meet the deadlines for being able to utilize that 250,000 grant. So we're looking at our options and, you know, we're going to be working closely with the commissioner and with Landmarks to make sure that, you know, we get this great feature incorporated into the building.
Thanks, Carrie. So that's really everything that I wanted to talk about. Just want to express my gratefulness to all the city departments who are here. They've been such a supportive partner in this project. It's been a long time coming. We really hope the city council will support it. And I will turn it back to you, Councilor Bach.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And I want to note we were joined just before the presentation started by Council President Ed Flynn, who's also here and who actually has City Hall and City Hall Plaza in his district and has been a great advocate for people with disabilities moving around the city. Great. Well, I have a couple of questions and then I thought just go to council questions. One that I had was just like, can you give us a little bit more backstory about this grant program itself? Because I think this is the first time that I've seen it since coming on the council, and it just made me curious about, like, you know, how often are we eligible to apply for things like this? Have we used it a lot in the past? Is using it now a harbinger of things to come? Could we use it more? Like, just sort of curious about a bit of that context.
Yeah, so it's state funding and it's funneled through the Massachusetts Office on Disability. It has to be used by a municipality for a project that improves access. They give out grants ranging from probably like a few $1,000s to $250,000. When we applied for the wayfinding project, I think that was around 100,000 and we got denied. And then when we applied for the elevator last time, it was 250,000 and we got denied. So we were thrilled to learn that we got the whole thing funded this time. But the grants come out every year and they're across the state. And the MOD always publishes a list of who got the grants and then like some follow through, like when they do the improvements. So this will be a great story for us to share once the elevator's in. But I can send the city council some links about the grant and also about some towns who have gotten it before. I don't believe Boston has ever gotten one because we're the municipality in Boston and we haven't gotten one unless another department has done it, but I doubt that. So, you know, we're really excited to move forward. The grant program is about 5 years old. I think they started in 2017 and it was a huge announcement. I mean, people all over the state are really excited about this because municipalities sometimes don't put access as a priority. And I know Boston does, but you know, you have small towns, you have towns with greater needs. So sometimes access may take a back seat. So they're really conscientious about how they award these grants. So that makes me think our program had really great merit.
Great, thank you. No, that's really thrilling. And the opportunity, both the need and the opportunity to do the project expeditiously is also great. Especially, you know, obviously we've been using the mezzanine quite a lot for these public press conferences in the age of COVID. And so having that be fully accessible feels pretty urgent. My one other question was just for Joe, if you could speak a little bit to the kind of like landmarks aspect of this.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor. And hello, councillors. I'm Joe Cornish, the Director of Design Review for the Boston Landmarks Commission. And I will be the staff person working with Commissioner McCosh and all others to move this project forward. And you may know that Boston City Hall is a pending Boston landmark, and exterior work and interior work at the lobby and mezzanine has to be approved by the Boston Landmarks Commission. And we are so excited. How wonderful will it be to have the mezzanine accessible to everyone, everyone to enjoy the interior of this world-known building, 1969, one of the best examples of brutalist architecture in so many textbooks. And not only will this provide access to the mezzanine, but it'll also restore the staircase by having the removal of the existing chairlift. So that's even more exciting to restore the lobby back to its original appearance.
Great, thank you so much, Joe. And just for councilors' information, I think we'll have the deck that was presented over to you in your email momentarily. So if you're looking for that, you can look at it there. But I'll go now to councilors for questions in order of arrival. That'll be first Councillor Murphy, then Councillor Braden, Councillor Louis-Jean, Councillor Flynn, and yeah, I think that's who we've got for now. So Councillor Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for holding this important hearing. I know when we talk about equity and inclusion, we need to make sure we're always including those with disabilities in those conversations and addressing any time there's an access issue. As a special ed teacher, I was an inclusion teacher at the Henderson, and we were often moving our furniture and making sure that our students in wheelchairs or with mobility issues had access. And so it's very important. So a couple questions, or one question is making sure that we as a city or a council are funding these things. Like, thank you for taking the time and doing the work to find a grant, but I want to make sure that if there's ever a time where access is limited to any of our citizens, that we're spending that money in our budget too, that we're making sure that we're finding the money to make sure access is there for all of our citizens. So if this grant, if you hadn't, Kristen, gotten this grant approved this time, like what would you have done?
So that's a great point. And I really have to say, the city of Boston makes a huge commitment to accessibility. I have two architects on my team, architectural access director and architectural access specialist. So they work with public facilities, they work with property management. We were all involved in the design of City Hall Plaza. So every project the city does has accessibility at the forefront. The mezzanine project is a little bit tricky because this is in phase 2 of the redesign of City Hall Plaza. I think they're just finishing phase 1 now, City Hall redesign. So phase 1 had a lot of the plaza and some interior work. This is a little bit more in a later phase of reimagining City Hall. So I think we would have gotten to it, but I don't know if we would have gotten to it this quickly. But I just think it was a great opportunity and it matched, you know, the circumstances that we have. So
Sorry.
We had a slight interruption of sound there, but I think it's back.
Yeah, Commissioner, did you finish your point? You just got cut off at the very end of your sentence.
Yep, I finished it, but I just did want to let Councilor Murphy know, because I haven't met you yet, that I do use a wheelchair and I've taken the lift several times myself, and it is not a great experience. But even more than that, it's really for people who are elderly, people who have balance issues. I mean, there's many more people in that category than people who just use wheelchairs. I mean, for an older person to walk up flight after flight of stairs to get to the mezzanine is just impossible. So I'm really happy for that group of people.
No, and thank you for, you know, sharing that, and also, you know, bringing to the forefront that the noise and that dignity is as important as the access. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Councilor Murphy. I should have mentioned that we're also joined by Councilor Tanya Fernandez-Anderson of District 7 and Councilor Brian Worrell of District 4. Going now to Councilor Liz Braden, and then it'll be Councilor Louis-Jean. Councilor Braden.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner McCosh. This is really a very exciting moment. I'm like Councillor Murphy. I have a background in special ed. I was a physical therapist at Perkins School for the Blind. So mobility issues and mobility barriers are always something that I'm very cognizant of. I think just the timeline, it seems like a very steep timeline. In terms of procurement, are we confident that we'll be able to hit those targets and get the procurement done in time? And then also just a more general point, I find that those steps up to the mezzanine, if someone is a low vision person, it's a nightmare for someone with low vision. So, because everything blends in, you don't see where the steps are. So that's maybe something we can discuss at another time. But yes, just the timeline. I'm concerned that this is the middle of February, March, April. It's going to come very fast.
Yeah, so we did have a meeting. We've been meeting all along with public facilities. And I believe, and I'm going to ask Carrie to jump in too, but I believe they had already procured a lot of the equipment for the elevator project. And we met with the lift company, the lift that we want to purchase with this funding. And I don't believe they had any issues with supply, but I'm going to ask Carrie to jump in.
Sure, thank you. And thank you, Councilor Braden. Yes, there is a concern just, in terms of what we're seeing across the industry with procurement, but we are trying to be proactive. And right now we're thinking, because we have consulted to Commissioner McNaugh's point, we have consulted with different vendors. And basically it's going to come down to the final design. In the components of that. So the elevator and machinery we know we can get. If there's a glass enclosure, we once we have determined and we've reviewed with Joe the final design, which is going to be happening quickly. My team's working on this currently. Then we will be able to determine. But I think we will be able to exhaust the funds as part of this grant, based on what will be in place, even if we have to get it here earlier and pay for storage, so that we can say that we have this and we've procured it within the time frame.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. And so if it's not fully installed by the end of June, that's not a problem. It's just really making sure you've expended the funds to acquire the equipment, and that's the piece that we need to make sure we get done. Okay, very good. Madam Chair, that's all I had.
Great. Thank you so much, Councilor Braden. Councilor Louis-Jean, and then it'll be Council President Flynn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this great presentation. Congratulations on getting the grant. I'm also going to apologize because I had to step away for a bit. So I hope I'm not asking a question that was already asked, because I hate when that happens. So I apologize. But what are the other sources of funding? What are the other sources of funding that would have been available had you not received this grant? Like, what are the other pools of money from which you should be able to pull to get projects like this off the ground in a more expeditious manner?
So I believe it would just fall under the city's capital budget, and that would be like property and public facilities. Because we don't have a budget in my office for anything like accessibility improvements, and it's a public building, so I think that's Carrie's domain.
Yeah, so property management manages City Hall, and that's Commissioner Rooney's team. So basically, they do the operational, the maintenance, the upkeep. Our department manages the mayor's capital plan. So we are invested in between the work we're doing on City Plaza, the next phase of City Hall. Accessibility, and prior to when we do a project, we do a study and we look at the accessibility and also the code requirements that the building might be lacking, and incorporate that into the actual project. Sometimes the code triggers that automatically due to you know, the amount of work that's been performed in the building, but that's something that our department looks at when we do these, and we want to, you know, be able to forecast that out to our partners at OBM to make sure that we're incorporating these costs into the work, and how we're doing it here for City Hall, because there's a huge master plan for City Hall in the vision, you know, in the mayor's vision that we need to incorporate into the overall plan for our buildings. I'm sorry, Council. I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I may have a few more, but I can circle back with you offline.
Great. Thank you so much, Councillor. Council President Flynn, and then it'll be Councillor Fernandez Anderson. President Flynn?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Block, for this important meeting discussion, and I want to say thank you to Commissioner McCosh and to Kerry Griffin as well for the work both of you do in support of persons with disabilities. So I think it's probably the most important issue in the city, is making sure that persons with disability have full access to public spaces and private spaces. And certainly that area is not accessible to persons with disabilities. And Kristen, I see that lift going up the stairs, and I never saw anyone using it. And I said to myself, you know, even if someone did use it, it looks so dangerous for someone to use it. The other thing I was thinking about, Kristen, is, you know, I'm also concerned is where the mayor has the press conference there, walking down those stairs for persons with disabilities, not using the lift, but walking down those stairs where the banister, where the railing is located, kind of in the center of the stairway. You know, I don't think that's safe. I don't think that whole system is safe. That whole setup is safe. The stairs are too steep for a senior, for a person with disability, for you see my parents walking up and down Broadway all the time, but like an elderly person could not walk up those stairs going from the mezzanine up towards the 5th floor. It's impossible. And an elderly person could not walk down those stairs because how steep they are. It's impossible. And my parents have custody of a little special needs boy who can't really walk that well either. And he couldn't walk up those stairs or down those stairs. So I appreciate that we're getting the major lift there. So that's positive news. The other, I guess my question is, you know, I see a lot of people, city employees now, using the outside of the mezzanine for lunch, especially in the nice weather. But that area out there doesn't seem all that welcoming to persons with disabilities either. You know, so I'm wondering, have we done a complete audit of the whole building, of what spaces are in compliant and what spaces aren't in compliant with ADA issues? And if something's not in compliant with ADA issues, you know, it's my job, and it's all the councilor's job, and it's the mayor's job to get funding in the budget so everything in City Hall is ADA compliant. My question is, are we completely 100% in compliant at City Hall on ADA issues?
Thank you, Council President. I'll give it a little context, Carrie, and then I'll turn it over to you for the specifics. So you make some really good points. And the first thing I would say, as Joe mentioned earlier, is the building was built in 1969. Now, Massachusetts has really strong accessibility codes under 521 CMR, the Architectural Access Board, and they were implemented in 1968. So the building was designed, it was permitted, it was built by the time the AAB was launched. So it missed some of the critical built-in features of accessibility. And now, as we all know, the building is built of solid concrete. So it's really difficult to move walls. And I know that public facilities makes a Herculean effort when something has to be fixed, like even like to expand a bathroom door, it can be like a huge project. It's not like just taking down a wall, it's literally like demolishing concrete. So we are definitely cognizant of the fact of what the building is now, and we're working towards making it much more accessible. But one other point I want to make is you made a really good assessment when you said the lift isn't accessible. And I want to say that's a perfect example of something being compliant but not accessible, because it may meet the letter of the law, but it certainly doesn't meet the spirit of the law. And the example you give of your parents, I think, what if Age Strong wanted to have like a luncheon up there for seniors? You could never have the seniors going up one at a time on a lift like that. So I think that in the big picture, we are going to look at better improvements. And, you know, this is just the first step. And even if it's temporary for 5 or 10 years, it will certainly be a help. And then about are you talking about the courtyard, the exterior space?
Yeah, right. If you take a right and go outside,
Yeah.
Right in that space there where the city council has had their swearing in ceremony, that area out there.
Okay. Yeah, I'll turn it over to Carrie for input on that. The one thing I will say is that public facilities and property management consult us on everything that they do in the building. So I'll turn it over to Carrie for details.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Councilor Flynn, for your question. So yes, we have a City Hall master plan. We also have multiple projects that we have in design that we look at the accessibility. So right now we are doing we know the areas where there's issues in terms of, the second floor to the third floor. There's an elevator issue there. There's also a bathroom issue there for accessible bathrooms. We know that in all of these things are in terms of phasing for City Hall, but it's looking at the long-term vision of the building, because some of these issues would go away if we try to, incorporate some of the long-term vision of the building. Where it would, that it wouldn't no longer be an accessibility issue. However, we do have, for the projects that we have right now that are currently in design and in construction, we look at we always start with looking at accessibility, full accessibility, and life safety. So in terms of fire alarm code, sprinkler systems, everything we incorporate that as the overall view of, because we need to be able to phase this work and budget it appropriately.
Well, thank you, Commissioner McCosh, and thank you, Kerry. And I also want to say thank you to the property management team as well. In my comments, I should have said also at the beginning, I respect the work that all of you are doing. And I want to continue working with you, because these are critical and important issues, making sure that our persons with disabilities are treated with respect and dignity. So I appreciate the public facilities, the property management, Krista McCosh's team. But finally, my final point is, please come to us at the council. This is budget time, and it's our job to advocate effectively, working with the mayor for persons with disabilities. So my door is always open, and we need to do more to make our city accessible to everyone. Councilor Bork, thank you for letting me speak an extra couple of minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, President Flynn. Next up, I want to go to Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, and then it'll be Councilor Worrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And welcome, everyone. I just commend this process. I really think it's important, of course. And I was just wondering, and I think this is a little bit, right, going the extra step, I guess, is thinking about the other properties in the city that aren't ADA compliant or up to code. And what's the timeline that the city has to like get them up to code? I think about, like the fact that we as city or state, right, can actually fine the public for something like this that's not in compliance. So I wonder then, setting the precedence of what is supposed to be, then what's the timeline and what's it going to take us to get there?
So as you all know, the city owns a tremendous amount of buildings. They own schools, they own the municipal facilities, they own community centers and libraries. So the good news is everything that's reconstructed or newly constructed is fully ADA compliant. The disheartening news is a lot of these buildings are really old and need a lot of work. But like I keep saying, we are really involved with property management and public facilities on all their work. And we gave a lot of good input on the redesign of the McKim building at the Copley Library. They're doing a master plan to make the front entrance accessible because traditionally this entrance has not been accessible. There's a temporary ramp right now to get in, but it's really not in keeping with the building. So Public Facilities is doing a whole design master plan to make that accessible. So we know these things take time because of the age of the buildings and the budget. You could never make everything compliant all at once. So I think, like Kerry said, we have plans to bring things into compliance as we do work. And there are also triggers that happen, like if you spend so much money, then you have to make the whole building compliant. So when the city does a big renovation, then they are triggered by the law to make the whole thing compliant. So I would just say it's an evolving process because with the age of our buildings, it would just be impossible to do overnight. And I'll turn it to Kerry.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, so just to reiterate, when we look at a building, when we get, like, we're in full-blown SIPR capital planning cycle right now. As part of that, once we get assigned projects, we will look at, we'll actually look at what the value of the project is versus because the code gets triggered based on a 3-year duration. And if we exceed that full value of the building value, then we have to become full compliance. So if we go into something thinking, and this is all the upfront planning. So if we go into something thinking we're going to spend $2 million, but then we end up spending 16 million because we need to bring the building up to full code. We just that's part of our planning exercise that we do with our clients and the user agencies and with our partner. OBM is very much a partner with PFD throughout this process and throughout our planning exercise. But it is a priority for our department and for OBM, and why we look at it when we start a new project.
Is there somewhere I can reference a list somewhere?
It would be project dependent, but if you wanted to see, like, if you had a question on a building that we were doing, absolutely, we could provide you with the information on either the building, what's been studied in the past. If we haven't seen it yet, if it hasn't come to our office or the user agency hasn't applied for a study of it, we might not know about it or have studied it. But if you have a particular building, we could absolutely find the information.
And Counselor, I would just add to follow up on that even though every single facility might not be accessible, we still provide full access and services to Boston residents or visitors. So if somebody wanted to participate in a program that's in a school that's not accessible, then we would move the program. And that's part of my job as the ADA Title II coordinator. We have to ensure equal access to all of the city's programs and services, including meetings and events. So we do a ton of work with interdepartmental work with other city agencies like schools and Public Health Commission and property management, libraries. We work with all of them to ensure that if they are hosting any events or offering any programs, that they are fully accessible to persons with disabilities. And that's allowed under the ADA. while we transition into full compliance, because we certainly want to get there and it is a priority. Like I said, it's just going to be a phased in transition.
Thank you both. It's nice to know that there's a backup plan when it's not accessible, but there is no inventory, correct?
My staff and I were just reviewing the school plan, blanking on the name of it, but Build BPS, I think, and they have a chart that rates accessibility. So I think it might depend on department. I know I worked closely with the Public Health Commission, Office of Emergency Preparedness a few years ago, and they did an assessment of all the city's shelters, whether the shelters were in a school or a community center or a municipal building. So they have information on that. Similarly, the elections department has data on accessibility of polling places. They all need to be 100% ADA compliant. So we know those buildings are, they're not all city owned. Some of them are churches and elderly buildings, but we do have this information in a lot of places. It's just not consolidated all in one place.
I really appreciate all of your hard work. Good stuff, good information. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Worrell?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the presenters. And I don't have any questions at this moment, but it's great to hear that we're making the People's Building more accessible to all its constituents. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Councillor Worrell. I had one follow-up question, and then I'll just let any other councillor who's got a follow-up, if you can just raise your hand or text me, otherwise let me know that you have one. I guess I was wondering a little bit about wayfinding to this lift, because I was thinking that when I was looking at that image of where it's going to be, I mean, I think actually, like, you know, from the historic landmarks perspective, it's probably like a good thing that it's so tucked away that like one hardly notices it. Like if you showed me that image without any context and you said, Kenzie, how have I changed City Hall in this picture? I don't know if I would have immediately identified it. But of course, as we think about accessibility, and I know that the commissioner underscores this all the time too, with the point about, and it relates to compliance versus access, like we want people to know that they're invited to a space, that they have a route to a space. So I'm just, and I think in general, when you enter City Hall, the sense is like, you're either going right to the elevators, you're going up the stairs, or you're going left to go down to the various functions, right? So I think there isn't a natural path of travel along the side there to that staircase and stuff. And so I'm just wondering how we're thinking about flagging up for people that they can now get to the lift.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I will say, wayfinding is a critical piece of our work because, as you say, you know, if you have a disability and you can't like take the typical route, you really need to be able to find the accessible route. So I don't know if anyone's ever noticed or knows about the asphalt pad on City Hall Plaza by the Sears Crescent. And that is an accessible route that we had installed about 10 years ago for people with disabilities to get across the plaza. That being said, a lot of people didn't know about it. So we worked with property management to put signage up that says accessible route. And I know the work of my architectural access team, they emphasize that in every review they do, that wayfinding is a critical piece of work, because if we have accessible features, but nobody knows they're there, they might as well not be there. So we had a meeting on site last week with the elevator consultants, with public facilities and property management, and we reviewed the space. And luckily enough, there's just a little area right there that will work perfectly. We were lucky that the nursing pod is on one side and that there's a space on the other side. But one good thing is that it's going to be clear glass and you'll be able to see it, you know, through the pillar from the front entrance of City Hall. But we will definitely add signage and wayfinding tools to get to there. We'll also inform like security and the greeters in City Hall, and we'll do outreach to the disability community. So we're definitely aware of that, and that is a big part of the installation.
Great. No, that's great to hear. Yeah, I don't want us to hide it so that people don't know it's there. But all right, I saw that Councilor Murphy had her hand up as well. Councilor Murphy, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, so thank you everyone for this. Sorry, my camera's off. I'm in the car now, but wanted to, after I spoke, people did mention how different administrations have used this landing at different times. And I know Mayor Wu uses it often, and reminded me that my Auntie Kay did not attend my swearing in on January 3rd because she wasn't sure, because she uses a wheelchair, that she'd be able to access from that level. So I'm just happy that, you know, this conversation is happening and that we're moving forward to make sure that this elevator is in place and that we're not blocking anyone from access to, and we're also not scheduling things in areas because there is an access, right? So coming from both ends is important. So thank you very much for all this.
Thank you so much, Councilor Murphy. President Flynn?
Yeah, thank you, Council Bach. And again, just want to say thank you to my good friend, Kristen. So Kristen, I know the Disability Commission meets at the City Council chamber, and I try to go to the meetings as well. You guys usually meet in the evenings. So is that fully accessible for everyone, for every person with disability? The City Council chamber. I know Mayor Wu and Mayor Walsh, Councilor Wu, did it in the resident and the city departments advocated for that. But is it completely accessible now?
So I would say not only is it completely accessible, but it has what we call ideal access, because it's fully accessible for people in wheelchairs, including they took out the whole front row of seats and left spaces for wheelchairs to sit. So wheelchairs don't have to just stick out in the middle of an aisle, which I know as a wheelchair user is very frustrating and uncomfortable. But they also put in an audio loop so people who have hearing aids can tune right into the sound system. We also installed TVs in certain areas. So when we have captions running, people who are deaf or hard of hearing can sit close to the TV and watch the captions. You know, they really looked at every piece of accessibility. They upgraded the acoustics so that it wouldn't be so echoey and, you know, really poor quality of acoustics. They really did a bunch of things in the City Council chamber, which created ideal access. And we're thrilled that the City Council gave us permission to meet there. Unfortunately, since the pandemic, we haven't met in person, but we do hope to get back to that soon. But you're welcome to come to our Zoom meetings. We can put you on the calendar if you'd like.
Well, thank you, Kristen. I'll definitely come to the next meeting. And just as an FYI, I'm going to Washington in a couple of weeks, the Disabled American Veterans Conference. That's in DC, and advocating for more funding nationally for disabled veterans. But I always reference the great work the City of Boston does in support of persons with disabilities. And I kind of encourage people across the country to take a look at what Boston is doing in support of persons with disabilities. Having said that, there's always more work we can do. So proud to work with you and with Kerry and with the whole team there. So Councilor Block, thank you. I have no further questions.
Great, thank you so much, Councilor Flynn. I'm afraid I came up with one more, which was just, Kerry, if you could speak to like what the total development cost of this project is. I mean, we're getting 250,000 and it sounds like, you know, we've contemplated that to really be most of the cost of it, but you know, there are like these other incidentals, or I don't know, well, I'll just let you speak to it.
Yeah, sure. We, the 250,000 is not going to cover the full cost of the project. Because the grant actually is very specific that it cannot include design cost, it cannot include consulting cost, but it will, I don't have that now because like I said, we're still in design, but we will get an estimate. And I can certainly forward that over to the council once I have all costs all in, just for complete transparency. But again, our partners at OBM, when we met early on with property management and Commissioner McGosh and her team, they were fully supportive of doing this work and funding it. So, but that the 250 will not cover the full cost.
Got it. Right. Sorry, I mixed that up. The 250 was the max award we could get from this grant.
Correct.
But do you, just from a sense of scale perspective, like, is this a $500,000 project? Is this a $1 million project? Like what? Just.
I would say it's anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million.
Okay. All right.
And I will just add to that, OBM and public facilities really made a commitment to this, even if we didn't get the grant. So it's kind of a bonus, and we really appreciated their support.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And yeah, grateful to everybody for pulling together to get this done. I think it'll be good for the whole council. And I would just say, Commissioner, to tag on to President Flynn's point, because I think that the the opening up of the outdoor courtyard on the 3rd floor for staff to have lunch and stuff in the spring and summer was actually quite pleasant. And I think a lot of that space actually does have ramps and such, so that's great. But I did find myself wondering while he was speaking about whether we might need like a power assisted door or something there, because I have a gut that it would be hard if you were in a wheelchair to get that door open on your own. So that's just a little side note flag. But I'm sure Councilor Flynn will stay on top of it. And I hope it's been clear from today that you've got lots of advocates on the city council who are ready and willing to help make the building and our portfolio more ADA accessible. Councilor Flynn, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, Councilor Bach, is the door on the Congress Street side, the entrance to the door on the Congress Street side, where you hit the button so it opens automatically, is not working, or it wasn't working recently. So just something to that we might want to check, because I should have let you guys know about it, but I realized it last week. But maybe we can check on that after the meeting.
Great, sounds good. Well, I certainly want to say that I will be strongly recommending this grant for approval at our next council meeting. And I'm grateful again for all the detailed presentations from the city staff. I don't believe we have anyone signed up for public testimony, but I'll just check right now. Shane or Carrie, do you have anybody?
Hi, Madam Chair. Nope, I don't have anyone signed up.
Okay, great. Well, then with thanks to you all, this hearing of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.